Hi, my name is Alexander Gargenta, and today we're breaking open Gradle with Hans Dockter, the founder of the project. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Before we get started on Gradle itself and kind of the behind the scenes of Gradle, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What are you passionate about? What do you do in your day-to-day life? That hopefully is going to lead into why Gradle.
Yeah. So my name is Hans Dockter. I'm based in Berlin, Germany, and I'm passionate about automating the software delivery process in the enterprise, right? And that's what I also do for a living. So that's why I founded Gradle and the company behind Gradle.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about Gradle itself. What is it? How it differs from essentially its alternatives.
Yep.
And then we'll go behind the scenes of Gradle.
Yeah, cool. Gradle is first of all an open source build system, general purpose, platform agnostic, and with extensions for Java, C++, Scala, Android, etc., etc. And basically, we see good automation as an enabler for efficient software development in the enterprise with any larger software stack. And the requirements for those automation processes have tremendously increased over the last years. So and the tools that were around, let's say, for quite a while, we're doing a good job with the requirements 10 years ago. Hey, I want my archive, I want to copy some stuff, I want to compile. But now looking at the whole, modeling of the continuous delivery process, there are new requirements in terms of, performance, flexibility. Modeling those processes can be very challenging, and you need to have a tool that is up to the job, basically. And that's the vision of Gradle, to be up to the job for doing that.
Okay, so kind of to double click on that, and this is obviously one of the questions that I first had when I learned of Gradle. How does it compare to some of the actual tools, like for example Maven and Builder, even one of the newer ones? And specifically in the context of that question, what were the actual pain points that you had that led you to actually create Gradle?
Yeah, good question. One way to answer it. There is a famous quote from Moshe Feldenkrais. Has nothing to do with software development, but you can apply it. He was saying what he's trying to achieve with his stuff is to make the impossible possible, the possible easy, and the easy elegant. And when you apply those requirements to Maven and Ant, you get pretty different answers about the strengths of those tools and the weaknesses. None of those tools scores high point in all of those areas, right? Mm-hmm. So Maven very often makes the possible easy, and the easy elegant, well, that can be discussed, but it definitely doesn't make the impossible possible. Sometimes make the possible impossible, right? Because the automation domain, as it is nowadays, has a lot of unanticipated requirements. And if you do a framework which has too many expectations of how the world looks like, you're sooner or later bound to run into issues. And on the other hand, makes, if you like, the impossible possible. It's very flexible. On the other hand, it has a very, very simple model and makes it very hard to add any abstractions. So you have a lot of maintainability issues with Ant and builds that are in a nightmare state. Nobody knows what the build is doing anymore. Nobody dares to touch it, which is a big problem.
Okay,
right,
but so if you had to summarize this in an elevator pitch, to sell someone who today has invested into Maven or Ant based build system, why should they switch to Gradle?
Well, it depends on their pain points. Their pain points might be mostly maintainability. The pain point might be performance. The pain point might be usability. The pain point might be extendability. And I think the pain point might be standardization. Mm-hmm. And in all of those areas, I think Gradle does already a tremendous job, better than any of the competitors. Mm-hmm. So, and then the question is, what is your actual pain points, which might be quite different depending on who's using it. Is it this single project with 500 developers working on one ear, or is it this enterprise with many different projects where they want to have a kind of standardized ways of building software? It's a different challenge, right? And Gradle has answers, different answers to both of those challenges.
Okay.
Makes sense? Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, I kind of picture Gradle as, in between, like a sweet spot in between Ant and the flexibility of Ant, but also the anarchy around Ant and the rigidity of Maven.
Yes.
Like kind of somewhere in the middle of that.
Yes.
But the question that I have in my mind is, are these pain points real enough for people to invest into essentially a new build system? Like, so we know Maven and Ant are not perfect, but are they just good enough? Is this a hurdle that you and the project needs to overcome? Or is the project essentially, the benefits of the project speak for themselves enough that you're seeing real acceptance?
Yes. So no, we're seeing massive acceptance. We're seeing massive pain, dramatic pain. Really, we are involved with some big projects that ship software for a living as a company. So it's not just some internal software, right, for the greater good of the company. It's what they're selling, and they have build times of 10 hours. They have developers come to work. They do an SVN update, takes 20 minutes. They do an Eclipse refresh, takes another 40 minutes. And then the builds take 6 hours. They work in Northern America and in India. When should they do their commits? You know what I mean? They have, the build is always red. They don't manage to ship regularly features to QA for testing. They're trying to do Scrum, but can't do Scrum because the feedback cycles are not there. They are seriously endangered in their capability of delivering software to their clients. So the quality is really bad of their software. So now the clients are saying, hey guys, we don't want a new version. We don't trust you anymore, but we want some of the features of the new version. Now they have 15 branches. And it's a 10-year-old legacy application. They're so afraid to doing anything ambitious with it, paying back any technical debt. They're in serious trouble. So and an enabler for getting out of that, a requirement, is improving the automation, improving the feedback cycles. So I mean, not every company is in such a bad shape, but I think every company with a large software stack has serious challenges and serious potential. I mean, imagine you have a build with 500 developers and you make them 3% more efficient. You do some math, right? And the other thing I find very interesting is when you work at a shop where you, let's say, are forced to be so unproductive. And a big part of that is the automation. Some people like it, right? You can hide behind that. Other people get extremely frustrated. So basically, you're losing the wrong people because of that. Right. The people that are productive can't show that they are productive, and the people that don't like to be productive don't have to be. So that's so it is a pretty. I think it's a pretty fundamental thing you need to get right.
Right. It acts as an enabler for better processes within a team.
Absolutely.
But what about smaller teams? Like, so what you mentioned is essentially large companies, large projects, large teams. What about, say, startups, folks in open source? Well, actually, open source obviously can get very large.
Yes.
But even a project like Gradle itself.
Look at Gradle, exactly.
You obviously dog food your own system, but what's in it for them?
Yeah. So it's a very good question because I mean, there are projects which are so small. So let's take Commons logging. I mean, I never had a look at the build at Commons logging, but I think their project success won't be to a large degree determined by the automation tools they are using, right? But look at Gradle, right? It's a fairly small project compared to any enterprise project, but it's pretty complex. It's a platform after all, right? To be used on IBM, JDK 7, on Sun, JDK 5, on this platform, on that platform, in a critical infrastructure space, so with the requirement of high quality. We release every 6 weeks. So we're really trying to, not trying, we're practicing what we preach with continuous delivery, getting the features out very soon to our users. So, and if you look at our automation, it's pretty nifty stuff what we're doing, right? All the metrics testing we have to do, and the one-click releases, which means not just building the code, building the distributions. It also means building the documentation with the with the correct version numbers, and every snippet in the documentation is live code, or I would say 99%. So it's integration tested, and then the output gets captured and also inserted into the user guide. So we have a high quality of the user guide. We wouldn't have the resources to pay a copy editor for every release, every 6 weeks to go through all the examples. So basically, for us as a company with limited resources, automation helps us in a very efficient way to to stay lean, to stay agile, and maintain our high quality. So yeah.
So which begs another quick question. How do you, is there any data to back this up? Like, has anyone done any sort of studies, the way, for example, the zero turnaround folks have done studies to show how their product enables people to be more productive by, having a more rapid build, deploy,
Yes.
test cycle. Have you guys done anything like that, or have seen any of your clients report some actual numbers to
Yes.
say, hey, we've
Yes.
actually been able to improve our productivity as a result of Gradle?
Yes, very good question. We would love to have something public. We don't have anything public. We only know about two private studies, one from a very big financial institute, which has rolled it out to thousands of their developers. So it's something that is on our list to come up with, because I think investing into automation, regardless of the tool, has a high leverage. So there's an easy to make business case, I think, for that. And it would be good to have some actual case studies to make that more explicit, right? That business case.
Okay, cool. So let's roll back the film a little bit, kind of
Yeah.
go back to the beginning of Gradle. Can you just tell us, how did you get started? What was the moment where you kind of thought, hey, I'm onto something, this is better, this is worth pursuing, this is worth creating an open source project around, and then later on even forming a company around this? What did that look like?
Yeah, good question. So I quit basically the last project where I was involved as a freelancer for a number of reasons, and was thinking, hey, what to do next? I wanted to have a little break, right? I was considering completely different things to do, and at that point, dynamic languages were all hype. So, and I had my, I had my little experiments, but
Playing with Groovy?
never did anything serious, right? So I said, okay. I got really frustrated with the build system in the last project I was involved. I also took on the responsibility as a build master, and was pretty ambitious regarding the automation we were doing, and I got extremely frustrated, deeply frustrated. The last time I was so frustrated was with EJB2 container management systems, right? So that was kind of, I said, hey, I'm too old for that stuff, and so I thought, hey, let's try a build system experiment with Groovy, because I can get my hands really dirty with Groovy, get my own opinion about dynamic languages, used in a serious way, and can do it in a domain I'm passionate about. And after 2 months, I had the feeling, hey, I'm onto something.
Okay.
Right, and then it was clear that that's what I'm going to do, right? And I think immediately it was clear for me, well, if I do this full time, and it was necessary to do it full time, it's just the domain is just too standardized. People just expect too much at once because they are spoiled with the other tools. You can't have, you have to, it's not good enough to offer some interesting idea. You need a tool that does the job. So it was clear I have to do this full time. So after those couple of months, it was also clear I want to have a business model at one point behind that. Spring Source was always a company I looked at for inspiration of how to do, also open source business. But first it was the passion, to solve that domain, and then the necessity to earn something for a living if you want to do that.
Okay. So like, in terms of just a timeline, what did that look like? When was the first idea formed in your mind to do something with?
Autumn 2007.
Okay, and then 2 months after that, you said, okay, I'm onto something.
Yes.
At that point, you kind of set it out as a real open source project.
Yes.
Okay, and then how long after that did you kind of see, okay, I'm going to do this full time, let's build an actual company or a business model around that?
That's a good question. So when I started, I thought, after 1 year, there will be 1.0 and everything will be like it is today, right? So, and it took much, much longer. I mean, the good thing was, from day one, there was interest. So I released at that point Gradle 0.1, and the mailing list was busy, and I got invited to conferences, and so that gave me a lot of energy, right, to continue, right? I had no idea at that time what a steep road it is, actually, to really, enter such a crucial area of software development, right? Like build systems and trying to become a new standard there, right? So and then what really helped was what basically is an essential part of the Gradle story is that after a couple of months, I got this patch in Jira from some guy I've never heard about, and it was patching something in the very core, so I thought, I can't be bothered looking at it, I have other stuff to do, right? And then after a couple of weeks, I said, oh, damn, I have to reply to this guy, right? I mean, if he sends a patch. And I looked at this patch and said, wow, this is amazing stuff, right? So, and it was Adam Murdoch, who is basically the co-founder of Gradle, and I immediately asked him, do you want to join? And he said yes, and both of us then drove the project and pushed the project forward over the next couple of years. So, and then in 2009, we thought, well, now it's time to set something up for the business. I mean, it was, before that it was too early. We always had to be aware of, we don't want to overpromise something, right? It was okay for some early adapters, but we knew the deficiencies, starting with IDE integration and other stuff. So I was happy about the growth, but I also was aware too much growth can be also very dangerous, because people, can be disappointed, and we don't want to disappoint people. So I was always very anxious about not raising wrong expectations about what phase we're in as a project currently. And then, we founded the company middle of 2009, and then we got the first big enterprise users, right? So,
So tell us about the business model. We'll come back to the initial seeds again, but the business model. So is it like traditional, what JBoss did back in the day, the professional open source, which SpringSource is doing, now part of VMware? The professional open source is the same sort of approach?
Yes, so it's the same sort of approach. It's with some subtleties, right? So basically, I mean, a build system, the whole purpose of Gradle is that the developers shouldn't be bothered about the build system, right? So only the build masters need to really deep dive into it. So that means for SpringSource, every developer had to have a deep dive into SpringSource. Into the Spring framework, right? For Gradle, that's a little bit different. So on the other hand, Gradle is not just a developer tool. We often get involved with companies not because the developers are complaining, they are often overheard, that's my impression, but because QA and release management is very unhappy. So in a certain way, not in a certain way, Gradle as a technology is closer to the production of the software and the delivery of the software than a pure development tool. So that gives us a pretty high ranking in terms of business priorities, which is good for our business model. But as you said, it's a service model. It's support subscription, training, on-site consulting, remote consulting, prioritized open source development, custom development, that kind of stuff.
Do you also help companies establish processes around their business, their essentially practices, software release practices?
Yes, very good point. So that's the other thing. We're not just the company behind Gradle. We also have a lot of experience in the whole continuous delivery domain. And it's a complex domain. So first of all, you don't have a tooling challenge. First of all, you have a process challenge. And you have really to know what you want to do. Yes, and we help a lot with that.
And do you end up supporting other sorts of platforms in the context of that, including, continuous integration platforms or other build systems, even non-Gradle environments?
Absolutely. I mean, let's say if you roll this out for a whole enterprise, this project has end of life in 2 years and has a nightmare end build. Do you really want to natively migrate this to Gradle? Or what Gradle is really good at, it can, Gradle, the idea is be like water, right? So we can say, okay, this is the build. This is one aspect of your continuous delivery thing, that is end build. So let's integrate it. Gradle choreographs everything, but the native building is not happening by Gradle. That's perfectly fine with Gradle.
And in fact, I know that Gradle integrates really well with Ant and Maven. So it lends itself to that really well.
Yes.
Now let's go back again.
But even if you have MS build or some make files you don't want to migrate to native Gradle, then okay, we do the binary management of your C++ problems, but to compile, we just integrate with what you have. So I think that's a necessity. You can't expect from a large enterprise, to migrate everything.
Understood. Not many of us are blessed with greenfield projects with all the decisions up to us.
Yes.
So let's go back again to the beginning, or actually just after the beginning. How did you kind of, you said there was discussion going on in this mailing list. How did you spark up this discussion? What was your way of getting people to know of Gradle? How did you spread the word around?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, going to conferences. That was very important.
Is this because you consciously made a choice, I'm going to go and tell the world about this because this is such a big problem and they need to know about it, or you kind of, people stumbled upon Gradle and started inviting you?
Both.
Okay.
But it was clear for me it's a perfect venue, to engage people, to learn about people, to make. I mean, at the end of the day, even software development it's face-to-face is so important, and we often had people that were considering doing Gradle, for quite a while, but never. The last spark was missing, and then you meet with them, you discuss with them, share your vision, enhance their vision, and boom, next week they were going full steam.
Nice.
So face-to-face is so important. Especially, that's the other thing. If you're working from your home office, I mean, it's a great privilege to some degree. On the other hand, I did this then at one point also for the company I was working for before for a couple of years, and going out and talking face to face, not just via Skype, is also very important for me to get some energy back and not just sticking at home and Otherwise, when you just work from home, it's kind of interesting. You are very focused on seeing the problems. This is not done yet. This is not done yet. On the mailing list, they're usually only people that have problems, right? And when you're going out, you have the people saying, "Oh, thank you so much for your tool. It's doing a great job." So you easily forget about the stuff you have already achieved, right? When you just stay at home and don't talk with the world.
You get a better feedback loop
yes.
by getting it outside of your cave, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
we as software developers have the tendency to go back in our cave and focus on one thing and forget about the rest.
Yes.
So tell me about your team. So I saw on your website you have quite a few well-known and respected people in the industry working with you on Gradle. The founder of Mockito, Spocket, and whatnot. So how do you go about building or evangelizing Gradle, not just for the end users, but also for the folks that you want to bring in to help with the project as contributors, or even folks that would join, Gradleware and help with the company?
Good question. Very good question. There is some. Okay, so first of all, I mean, if those guys, I was lucky that I came to know them before Gradle, or so, and then it just that I know that the first one, Peter Niederwieser, I was thinking, whom should we hire? And I had a big jet lag, from some of my traveling. So I was laying in bed at night without a computer. I said, I have to learn to sleep, so no distraction on my computer, but I couldn't sleep. So I was laying there awake for hours. And then I said, oh, damn, you have to ask Peter, right? So I called him the next day, and he joined. So the funny thing is, we never had a no, basically. So people are pretty excited of what we're doing, and so far it was mostly out of my personal network, or the network then of the other guys that have joined, which is a very good way to get good people. So the danger we have as a now professional open source company, there's now kind of this core team, right? Having a private mailing list, having having HipChat, for communicating. So it's easy to kind of become too inward looking, and not listening to what the other guys are saying, or not listening for outside help, right? Because so that is one of it just happens easily, and you have to be very disciplined about saying, hey, this is not a topic for the private mailing list. Why? This is a topic for the dev list, right? So we pay a lot of attention that we stay a very open project for everyone. And the good thing is that most of the guys that have joined us came from a non-professional open source context. So it's basically also in their DNA. But it's something you have to be very disciplined about. If you don't watch it, you easily fall into this inward trap and become you're an open source project to some degree, license-wise, but not cultural-wise.
Okay.
Right. So
that brings us a couple of questions. I'm actually going to ask you about open source in a moment, but actually let's go back to the team. You said you invited these folks. So obviously, one of the stories I'm hearing here is that you're making these conscious decisions, which is great, which is also something I want to get to. But these folks that you invited to join the project, did they join because of who you are and what you represented, in their eyes as a developer, or because they immediately identified with the Gradle as a project? So basically, I'm trying to get to what degree your personal relationships played a role in your ability to bring these folks on, rather than the Gradle itself.
Yeah, very, very good question. And I can only guess.
Okay.
Right? It's not. I mean, I've never analyzed it with them, so that I really know. I would say it's both, right? So if you look at the background of those guys, they're Selenium, Spork, Mockito, they're all very passionate about testing, and those people usually have an affinity to automating, right? I mean, that's just, those are twins, right? So they all had an affinity to the domain. That's definitely one thing. So in that respect, it was Gradle and not whatever, some word processor, right? Open source word processor. And the other thing, definitely had also to do with the culture of the project, of which, of course, I'm an important part. So I think it's a credibility, it's an openness. I mean, it's quite a big decision to leave your job and then say, hey, I do this open source thing, right? No idea what's going to happen. They had good jobs before that. So I think then that it's a credibility thing, right? That they believe the vision we have for Gradle and Gradleware and like that. So I think both is equally important, I would say.
What about other contributors? Do you have folks that are not part of Gradleware but are part of the dev list or this contributor project? And how do you go about recruiting those? Yeah, good question. So we had a few, especially from enterprise clients that needed to solve certain problems. So, and I think we grew pretty rapidly, right? From basically, Adam and me to now, 13 people. And I think during that time, we didn't do the best job to engage external contributors. We didn't offer a clear road for them to walk on. And that's one of the things I'm refocusing on, because we really want to be open and want contributors. We have external ones, but I think we could have more, right? If we make it a little bit easier to tell them, hey, this is the vision, this is the most important stuff we would like to be solved, and reach out to them and talk with them. So that's what I picked up in the last couple of months too. And some people are now working on exciting stuff. So it's extremely important for us to get contributors. On the other hand, I mean, everybody's probably saying this, but I would say we're pretty picky regarding certain aspects of software development. So I think all of us are, at least me and Adam, we're deeply inspired by domain-driven design. So we really want to model the domain, and we want to deepen the model with every release. And we don't allow any shortcuts just to provide some quick and dirty solution. So and we had people that were involved with Gradle that were more interested in the algorithmic part, right? Let's do something parallel. And the API and the DSL, that's the easy bit. And we would say, man, no. That's the hardest bit. The engineering stuff, I mean, it's a challenge, but the hardest bit is the model. And if you don't care about a deep model, then you're in the wrong project, right? So, and other projects, they have different priorities. So that's one thing that is important to us. The other is the quality. I mean, we have 8,000 unit tests. We release every 6 weeks. So if you're not passionate about that, so if you provide a patch without serious testing, then we're not so interested in that. Cool. So you definitely have standards that you expect the others to follow, and you kind of have to be on the same technical level. You have to be sync in terms of what's important to you. And I completely agree with you, by the way, on the model thing. So in terms of users, you said you speak at conferences. You have people write books on this subject. How do you take feedback from the community? How do you incorporate where the community sees Gradle and where they want to take it? How do you essentially drive the project forward? Yes.
So the latter question is a little bit different than it's part of the community is part of driving the project forward, right? So I mean, we invested a lot in the infrastructure for our community. I think we have a really, really cool forum, which is not just a forum. It's not just a kind of question and answer forum. It tries also to model our domain, right? It also serves as the issue tracker, as the blog of Gradle and stuff like that. So we did a lot of cool stuff. That this is really nice to use. So that's one requirement. The other is, and that's a cultural thing, be open. I mean, the thing is, another danger is when you're inwards looking, you don't like any bad news, right? You can have a bad feedback cycle that you think, oh, we're the greatest, we're the best, right? And the inner team is just amplifying this to the other, and you kind of try to avoid all the stuff that is not good, all the pain points. You know what I mean? You can easily try to ignore that and don't openly enter such a discussion. So I think we don't do that. So we try to be really open, and if people raise issues, they are heard and stuff is discussed. I think that's probably the most important aspect of it, to engage users and to learn from them. The other thing would be to have better voting schemes and so that they have more explicit say. What we're also trying to do, which is a hard job, is being very transparent about the roadmap so that we can get feedback.
Right.
But it's hard to have a roadmap that is not getting stale too soon. So we're still working on making that better.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. A lot of people use open source to describe a lot of things, but to you, it seems that first and foremost, open means transparent. Like I know of a lot of projects. Like for example, I do a lot of Android work, and Android is open source, but it's far from transparent. Whereas to you, that is something that's important.
Yeah.
Now, what about the open source itself? Like, so you obviously chose to make this open source. What inspired you? Why did you choose a particular license? What do you sort of expect to see from the community? I also see right on the website you say fork it, right?
Yeah.
What are the goals of open sourcing this, and why is this valuable to you?
Yeah.
Outside of just the transparent part.
Yes. So, good question. I mean, I think the build is such a critical piece of infrastructure. So I would say it's a requirement for adoption in that space. That's so that's a very sober argument, but nonetheless a very, very important one, right? I mean, yeah. And the other thing is, one really fun aspect of it is to get involved with so many people all over the world, basically, right? So this for us, open source works, right? It's not just a license model. It's also something that leads to a certain culture, to an exchange, meeting many people, sharing ideas with many people, and that would be very different if Gradleware were a closed source product.
It would definitely, of course, affect people's ability to adopt it as easily and trust the project. But what about forking? Like, do you expect someone to fork it and say we're going to create? Especially given how many build systems there are. The Apache alone has 3 build systems.
Yes.
4 if you count Ivy as a kind of enabler for end. But what if somebody were to say, hey, I like Gradle, but I'm not really on the same wavelength as Hans and the team. I'm going to go and fork it and build something else myself. Is that a possibility? Do you care about that?
I mean, the idea of fork it is, hey, fork it, right, to have a feature branch and contribute something, right? That's why we have it on the website, right? But I mean, if someone were to do it, we don't care. So it's not a concern for us.
Fair enough.
But it's also nothing I'm looking forward to. I mean, defragmentation is not necessarily a good thing. So
understood.
But let's see if that is going to happen. How we deal with that. Whether this will be a friendly relationship or rather not. I don't know.
Okay. Cool. So a couple more questions, and we need to be wrapping up soon.
Yep.
In terms of the issues you're currently facing, whether at a company or with the project itself, what are some of the biggest concerns you have? The biggest things you want to tackle? As the problems in the community, with the project, or the company?
So, good question. I could talk very long about that. I mean, one challenge is also a personal one. You live in this, so if people are interested in doing something, right? You live in this open source world, completely distributed, 24 hours a day activity, and finding a work-life balance.
You have 3 kids, right?
And 3 kids, and and a company behind that, being the CEO. So there is not much external structure that gives structure to your life, right? You need to be, or hopefully you have enough inner strength, right, to impose some inner structure, right, that comes from inside to this completely structureless external world you're working in, if you know what I mean. Otherwise, it's can be very very training in the long run to do this job, basically. So that's one of the challenges where I had to learn a lot how to deal with that. And it's still a constant learning process. So that's nothing to underestimate. Which leads me to the biggest challenge where, although I think it's important to mention, although I think we basically passed that cliff. So you're involved with a successful project. You're making your first serious business, right? And then you start to hire great tech people. So everything is like, ooh, everything is looking cool, right? You think almost we did it, right? But then you figure out that this is no longer two freelancers, basically. You now have a corporation, right? With a lot of problems to solve. And first of all, very time consuming. You have a booth at Java 1. And I had to organize the first one. So how big are the tables, right? And just organizing a booth for a conference is a hell of a lot of work. And then driving the project, talking with the community, understanding the tax system in the United States, which is big fun, right? Additional to the fun one in Germany.
Right.
So, and this growth, together with not having a professional business operation going, is a very fragile phase for a company. And the other thing is you have a good network in the tech world, but you don't have a good network in the business world. So whom to hire, right? Fortunately, we found really, really good people that are now, adding the professionality we have in the technical area to our business area, and we passed that cliff, and I'm very, very happy. But that is a very important step, and it's like you might think, hey, I'm smart enough, I can do it all myself, but it's a craft, business. Accounting, controlling, it's a craft where you need a lot of experience, and the earlier you can afford to have someone that does it in a really good way, the better. So that's my recommendation. Get a real professional in that area as soon as you can afford it.
So it's the last question actually on that note. Yeah. Looking back, everything, just looking through what you said, you had this itch to scratch, you formed this, created this product from a language you probably just had acquired. You engaged the community early on. You spoke at these conferences. You talked to the developers in your network. You created a company around this, a community around this, a pretty awesome looking website, infrastructure to support all of this. You're now growing this, hiring people. It seems like you have the skills in all these different areas to essentially make this happen. Right, it almost makes it, you make it look easy for someone from the outside. Obviously, this took years, of previous work life, experiences. But if somebody were to try to replicate what you did, and what you're still doing, right, in another area, what are kind of the life lessons, or what are the sort of things, the do's and don'ts that you'd recommend? Yeah. How do people go about launching successful open source projects?
Another very good question. So I think a couple of dangers along the road. So first, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, you wouldn't start it, right? So, and this passion is a tender blend. So once you, especially for me, and when you start getting sucked into all the business stuff, right? Which is, from my point of view, pretty sober stuff. That's not what I'm passionate about. But you have to do it.
You need to sustain the business.
Yeah. So if you're organically growing, then you can't hire from day one a good COO. So, and then this is kind of dangerous because you're getting detached from the technology, and that also that you pay a price for that with your passion for the domain. Because if you're no longer thinking about it, living it, it kind of leaves your heart a little bit, and then you're more driven by kind of business perspectives, and that's one thing we are trying to preserve, right? Is passion for solving this domain must be number one value of our company, not the revenue. That will follow, and that's easier said than done. But I think we're doing a good job. But preserving this passion for solving the domain, and not at one point saying, okay, cool, let's just make the successful business and whatever. Don't give up the passion, right? Because the economic requirements, they're a tough force, right? You have to face them. You have to sail this ocean, right? There's a lot of pressure when you have to pay 13 people every month, right? But so it can easily affect your values.
Right, yeah. And you kind of have to see past the technology. by you building this business, you're enabling the technology to spread and reach more people and affect more lives and hopefully make
Yes.
developers,
Yes.
that much more productive. So I
Absolutely.
think it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
So passion is the key ingredient.
For us, it is. I mean,
Right.
there might be projects where it works differently. So, but yes, but if that is an important ingredient for you, nurture it, right? So that's, yeah.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for coming. We are going to have you back tonight, actually,
Yeah.
at the San Francisco Java User Group event happening actually in a couple of hours. So we're going to go over the technology itself behind Gradle, and hopefully we get to talk a little more about, the intricacies of the Gradle system itself. So
Cool.
thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Appreciate
Sasha.
it.
Thanks.
Thanks.